What is up, ladies and gentlemen? It is your boy, James Eeks, and welcome to the Oceania IC wrap-up. This was our first ever international event for Sword and Shield. So I was personally super hyped to see what people brought, see if the meta had any really big shifts. But yeah, my aim for these videos is to keep you guys up to date, to show trends in the meta's growth, and to hopefully spark some ideas for you guys when you're making your own teams as well. So guys, before we get into this, please do consider checking me out on Twitch, guys. I stream 5 days a week, 4 hours a day. I would love that. But yeah, let's get right into it. But first off, guys, obviously a huge congratulations to Marco Hamantha Kaludura, who ended up winning the entire tournament. So obviously an amazing run by him. He was using a team of Whimsicott, Duraludon, Dracovish, Rotom Heat, Sylveon, and Kinkeldurr. Now guys, when we look at this team, we can see that it is definitely a hyper offense team. Hyper offense teams, guys, like to try and end the game as soon as possible. They are not really well suited for grindy, defensive, heavy positional switching matches. And if you guys did not notice, the two biggest events so far, being Dallas and now the Oceania IC, were both won by Duraludon Whimsicott. Once again, the fake tiers Duraludon combo proving how amazing it really is. It is an insanely common lead here in VGC 2020 for good reason. I do go more into Duraludon Whimsicott and the synergy between them in my Dallas wrap-up video, so guys, do check that out. The big thing I do want to point out though about Marco's Duraludon is that he was running Body Press. Body Press is a super cool choice to be able to hit T-Tar extremely hard. Much harder than a special steel move in the sand would do, and it is not affected by Snarl Arcanine either. With the right defensive investment on Duraludon, Moonblast plus Body Press could OHKO a max HP Tyranitar every single time, which is probably a huge surprise to T-Tar players when playing up against Marco's Body Press Duraludon. Guys, Whimsicott is also paramount to hyper offense teams with proper Tailwind usage and fake tiers reads. It is just a completely deadly combo of Duraludon and Whimsicott. So winning two big events is crazy. One big thing we saw across many teams this tournament and Marco's was the use of Rotom forms with max darkness off of Dark Pulse, usually being Nasty Plot, but Marco's actually was not Nasty Plot. Nasty Plot Rotom forms can pretty safely get up a Nasty Plot when supported by stuff like Arcanine, Togekiss, and they can really rip through teams, especially if they choose to run that Dark Pulse or the Max Darkness, because Max Darkness lowers both opposing Pokemon's special defense. Now, Marco also used a Flame Orb Kinkeldurr, which helped easily destroy T-Tar External Cores, which were extremely prevalent in Australia. We will talk about that later. Flame Orb Kinkeldurr is much less bulky than Assault Vest, but does an insane amount of damage. So he was really pumping out the damage with his hyper offense team. And then he had a Scarf Dracovish kind of rounding out the team. You know, Scarf Dracovish, Dracovish in general, is very common on these hyper offensive teams, and he obviously played it beautifully. He was the highest placing Dracovish, obviously, and there weren't very many Dracovishes in day 2 of Australia at all, so he was definitely the king Dracovish player of the weekend. Then he had a super fast Pixie Plate Sylveon to wrap up his team. Now, it was crazy. His Sylveon actually outsped Eduardo Cunha's Togekiss in the finals, which is crazy. So I'm sure that this huge speed investment on Marco's Sylveon really helped him get the result he got. So that was very cool. I will be sure to include the team below. Marco did post it on Twitter, so congratulations again to him, and check that out in the description if you want to see more details on his team. Next up, guys, we have Eduardo Cunha and Raghav Malavia coming in second and third respectively. They are two good friends of mine, so seeing them do so well was really awesome. Both of their teams featured Tyranitar, a Steel type, either Durant or Excadrill, Togekiss, Arcanine, Gourgeist, and a Water type, Gastrodon being on Edu's team and Milotic being on Raghav's team. Now, these cores are relatively standard, but the real breakout star of the weekend was Gourgeist, of course. Guys, 2 Gourgeists making the top 8 at Australia is pretty insane. No one could have ever seen that coming, that's for sure. But guys, why is Gourgeist good? Let's get into that. Well, Gourgeist is a strong physically defensive Trick Roomer. The fire types that are meant to deal with Gourgeist, such as Arcanine, really do not want to see T-Tar, Excadrill, or Durant. It is strong versus the popular Nasty Plot Rotom Wash with its Seed Bomb. That Seed Bomb can actually activate Tyranitar's weakness policy if needed. And then guys, the big star move is Trick or Treat. Guys, so Trick or Treat, it adds the ghost typing to the target. So it's different than Soak, where it just turns you into a plain water type. What it does is it adds the ghost type to you. So you can actually add ghost type to Tyranitar, making Tyranitar completely immune to fighting moves, which it's normally quad weak to, which is insane. And then you can also max darkness, you can Trick or Treat opposing Pokemon and make them weak to Tyranitar's max darkness, such as if you were to use Trick or Treat on an Arcanine, it is now weak to your max darkness instead of just neutral. So Gourgeist and Tyranitar are the really big core that work perfectly together. Edu really showed off the potential of Gastrodon, showing that it really can stall out certain teams just by itself if put into the right position. Many of Edu's games on stream had Gastrodon being the secret star of the show for sure. So Gastrodon showing why it is so good. Another cool standout thing on one of these two teams was Rogov's. His Excadrill being 3 attacks Swords Dance. So this Excadrill did not have Protect. A very manly set, I must say. Excadrill is commonly boosted by a Life Orb or just, 3 attacks Focus Sash. But Swords Dance takes that boosted attack to a whole nother level. And you are still able to max guard off of your Swords Dance when you are Dynamaxed. So it can be played the same, but it definitely it's definitely a different play style. It can achieve the same things is kind of what I mean to say, but you definitely have to play it differently. But after you get a Swords Dance up, you can really tear through teams with Excadrill. So congratulations again to Rogov and Eduardo, both using a similar team to each other, and it really destroyed the field of the tournament. So congratulations to them. Next, guys, the other big breakout Pokemon of the tournament for sure were the combination of Bisharp and Gengar. Both very rarely used Mons this season, but the combination of them top-cutted on 2 separate teams on Nihal Noir's team and Brady Smith. Sorry about that last name pronunciation, but yeah, this team, guys, was actually originally created by legendary team builder and outspoken VGC community member Cased Victory, so props to him for making such a cool team. The team is rounded out by 4 solid pillar Pokemon, pun intended: Conkeldurr, Togekiss, Arcanine, and Rotom Wash. This Rotom Wash being the aforementioned Nasty Plot kind. Gengar was running a standard Sash set with Icy Wind, which was super unexpected. It allowed the slower Bisharp to be able to pop common threats that would attack it, such as Arcanine. Like, if Arcanine were to lead into Gengar Bisharp, while Bisharp would get the +1 from the Defiant boost, Arcanine still wouldn't feel too threatened, as it feels like it could just burn it or just even Flare Blitz Bisharp to take it out, but that was not the case. Bisharp was running Life Orb and Assurance for maximum damage output relative to the standard maybe Focus Sash Bisharp. The really cool thing about this was Assurance is a dark move base 50 that is doubled in power if the target has already been damaged this turn. So Gengar Bisharp against an Arcanine, Gengar would Icy Wind, hitting the Arcanine, slowing it slower than Bisharp, and then Bisharp hitting with the double damaged Assurance, just knocking out an Arcanine right off the bat. So a super cool combination. Now, this combination was also very good against common Trick Room leads, Dragapult, Jellicent, etc. Any of the strong ghosts in the meta really had to be scared of this combination of Pokemon. The Gengar's bag of tricks was quite deep. It had Sludge Wave, which is a big spread poison move that also hits your partner, so Bisharp is immune to that due to its steel typing, and then he could also activate Togekiss's weakness policy with the Sludge Wave. So Gengar was a super cool Pokemon. It was also running Trick Room, crazy enough, to even maybe set up Trick Room for its own Bisharp and Conkeldurr, and then always even having that option of reversing the opponent's Trick Room, because sometimes people just wouldn't see it coming and not focus down the Gengar. So this was a super cool and innovative team that obviously caught many off guard this weekend. So congrats to Brady and Nihal and Case for doing so well at this tournament. Other noticeable placings here at this tournament were, when you look at the results, it's very obvious to see that Tyranitar and Excadrill did insanely well at this tournament. But I do want to point out the big brain call here on Eric Rios and Zachary Kelly, who finished just outside of the top 8. They were running Corviknight. While I personally don't hold Corviknight in a super high regard, it is one of the best Pokemon in the game to go up against T-Tar and Excadrill together. So seeing how popular the core was this weekend, I'm sure Corviknight put in a huge amount of work for these guys, and it was a great call, so good call by those guys. Now guys, let's get into the usage statistics of the Australia IC. There were a few really big changes here. Dragapult went down 5% as I predicted. I predicted that Dragapult usage would slowly keep going down and eventually plateau at some spot within the top 10 usage Pokemon. Togekiss actually went up from 65% at Dallas now to 75% here. So that is no surprise. Togekiss is an insane Pokemon. So nothing to be too surprised about here. Arcanine went up 6%, 40% to 46%. Conkeldurr doubled in usage from 13% at Dallas now to 26% here at Australia. Excadrill went up 10%, and Tyranitar usage went up a whopping 21% to 39% from 18% at Dallas. Now guys, while I'm highlighting all of these percentage changes like this happen when a meta becomes more and more fleshed out. These Pokemon that I just mentioned are just cementing themselves as the top dogs of the format. They work well on almost any balanced team, and they check each other, if that makes sense. You know, Conkeldurr's good against these, Excadrill's good against that. So this is why these Pokemon have such a high usage, and it's just showing that the meta is really getting fleshed out and kind of starting to standardize itself. Hard Trick Room took a massive hit at this tournament, guys. All Pokemon commonly used on it took a big usage hit. Rhyperior went down an astonishing 22% as opposed to Dallas. If you guys want to put that into perspective, there were as many Rhyperior in the top 64 at Australia as there were Rillaboom, Umbreon, and Hippowdon. Yeah. So it looks like with enough time, people have been able to adapt to the common Rhyperior weakness policy self-activation combinations and just not let it happen, play well around it, burn the Rhyperior, cycle intimidates, all that kind of stuff. So people are really finding their own of how to beat these Rhyperior teams. Now let's get into what the call for the tournament was. I would say, guys, with the insane amount of T-Tar Excadrill running around, I think the call here for Australia was Conkeldurr. Conkeldurr is honestly a nightmare for Tyranitar and Excadrill teams to see. Obviously, Tyranitar and Excadrill are almost always supported by Togekiss, which is a huge roadblock for Conkeldurr. But when Togekiss is dealt with, Conkeldurr can really do what it does best, and that is just one-shot Tyranitar, Excadrill, Mach Punch, heal up with Drain Punch, all that kind of stuff. So I think Conkeldurr was the call for Australia. Let's take a look at my predictions from my Dallas regional wrap-up and see how they kind of fared with the results here at Australia. Now, I predicted that Vanillux is going to drop off, and yes, the answer was yes. There were only 2 Vanillux in all of top 64, so Vanillux is definitely dying down. I did talk about it in my Dallas regionals wrap-up, why I think Vanillux isn't too amazing, so do check that out. As I just talked about, I talked about how Dragapult usage would slowly go down, and yes, it did. We already did talk about that, though. And then Jellicent usage, I predicted would either grow or stay the same, and it actually stayed the exact same at 15%, so we were also right about that. I said that Charizard was going to have a target on its back, and yes, it definitely did. Charizard performed pretty poorly at this tournament after winning Dallas. There were no Charizards in the top 16 at this tournament, and there was only one that even made the top 32, which was the day 2 of the tournament. And the one thing I was wrong about, guys, was I thought Hydreigon usage would go up a little bit. I think Hydreigon has a really good matchup against Rotoms and even T-Tar Excadrill to an extent, but I gotta say I underestimated the ability to be able to check Togekiss. I think Togekiss is just too good, and it unfortunately makes Hydreigon really hard to use, so I will take the L on that one. I was not right about Hydreigon. With that, let's get into my predictions for Collinsville Regionals coming up this weekend. This is going to be the last event before the meta changes on March 1st to the Season 3 rules. If you guys do want a deep analysis of the Season 3 rules and want to hear my opinions, do check out my video on that. I think it's really good. It has a lot of good stuff to say. But reason I'm saying that is that Collinsville Regionals meta won't be around for too much longer, as the meta is about to change in just 2 weeks time. But I would have to say that for Collinsville, I think the call is going to be Conkeldurr. Now, we just saw Conkeldurr win Australia and Dallas, and I think it has the potential to also win Collinsville. Conkeldurr does just a huge amount of damage to the top Pokemon used, and it's even really good against, you know, less common cores such as Rhyperior or Snorlax. It just has a really good matchup spread against the whole board of Pokemon. So I'm going to go with Conkeldurr for the call for Collinsville, but if I did want to pick a sleeper pick or something that could be really good to counter Conkeldurr, I'm going to have to go with Gyarados. Gyarados, with its extremely strong stab flying damage off of Bounce Max Airstream, can really just pop Conkeldurr and get its team into a good position. It could be Intimidate, which is really good against T-Tar, Excadrill, and Conkeldurr, or it could be a Moxie Boost set, and if it's supported well, it can just become a huge threat and really just sweep through teams. So guys, there was a lot to unravel here, but thank you so much for sticking with me. I hope you guys learned a thing or two and are that much more educated going into your next Pokemon event, or if you're just going to be watching events and not competing in them, I hope you know a little bit more about in-game dynamics and what you expect to see on people's teams in the future. Now guys, please, while you guys are still here, I do urge you to check out my Twitch. I always say, but it is my livelihood and I put in a lot of work over there, so it would mean the world to me if you guys went and checked me out over there. Drop me a follow, maybe even a Twitch Prime. I'd really appreciate that. So guys, like and comment this video, all that jazz. I read every comment. I reply to almost all of them. So guys, thank you so much for sticking with me, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.